Let's continue in the Tafsir of Surat Al-Baqarah. We're now in the third juz', approaching the end of Surat Al-Baqarah. Soon, inshallah, maybe in 2 weeks, I estimate, we'll start the third surah, Al-Imran, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The author says, after proving his power to revive the dead, from the previous ayat, we had the ayah of Prophet Ibrahim debating with Nimrod when he said to him, Rabbi alladhi yuhyi wa yumit, qala ana uhyi wa umit. He said, my Lord creates life and creates death. He said, I create life and I create death. And then in the ayah after that about Uzair, how Allah made him die and then brought him and his donkey back to life 100 years later. And then the ayah after that about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam and his miracle of reviving the dead birds. So after proving his power to revive the dead, which is an argument for resurrection, remember that the religion of the old Arabs was, or part of it was, denial of resurrection. God encouraged after this, after proving his power to revive the dead in the previous ayahs, then in the upcoming ayahs, God encouraged spending for his sake and informed that whoever spent for his sake shall have a great reward over which God has power. A great reward that God has power over. Allah Ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل. The allegory or the example of the spending of those who spend their monies in the way of Allah. They spend their monies for the sake of Allah. Is as the allegory, yani, it is the example of a seed that sprouted 7 ears. في كل سنبلة 100 حبة. In every ear is 100 seeds. Yani, so one seed that sprouted 7 ears, and within every ear is 100 seeds. So how's that? Yani, how many times is that? Wallahu yudha'ifu liman yasha. And Allah multiplies the reward beyond 700 for whomever He wills. So you saw where the 700 came from. Allah yudha'ifu liman yasha. He multiplies the reward beyond 700 times for whomever He wills. Wallahu wasi'un alim. And Allah is wasi', vastly generous, knower of the intentions of the spenders. الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى. Those who spend their monies in the way of Allah, for the sake of Allah, then they do not follow up what they spent with a reminder of the favor done, nor with harm. The harm is like saying, yani, embarrassing the person, for example, after being charitable to him. By the charity. لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. They shall have their reward from their Lord, and no fear shall be upon them, nor shall they grieve. قول معروف ومغفرة خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى. An agreeable word, politely declining a beggar, and forgiveness for his insistence is better than a charity followed by harm. Subhanallah. See how the Quran guides us to the good manners. An agreeable word, politely declining a beggar. So, you don't want to give charity to this beggar? Turn him down nicely. You don't like tell him, scram, for example. وَمَغْفِرَةٌ, and forgiveness for his insistence because he's begging you, he's following you. خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى. That is better than a charity followed by harm. Turning him down and overlooking his what one might deem annoying behavior is better than giving a charity followed by harm. Wallahu ghaniyyun halim. And Allah is independent of the charities, not swiftly punishing those who spitefully remind about their gifts. So I'll remind you here, what do we have here? It's going to come again too. So you know the style of the Quran. Allah Ta'ala in many verses, He describes Himself. In many of those, He describes Himself with two descriptions. Here's one, Ghaniyyun Halim. Wallahu Ghaniyyun Halim. Allah is Ghani, Halim. So Ghani has a meaning. It means the one who doesn't need anything. Al-Halim means the one who doesn't punish quickly, swiftly. In this dunya, that means you would sin and then He wouldn't punish you. He gives you time to repent. What do we have here? And Allah is independent of the charities. He doesn't need the charities. And not swiftly punishing those who spitefully remind about their gifts. So that's how some of the scholars of Tafsir direct such things. If you're not familiar with the Tafsir, like if you read some translations that are as literal as they can be, you might not realize that these descriptions of Allah, which appear in different places in the Quran, according to some scholars, they have interpretation that's relevant to the subject at hand. In another spot, it would be mentioned Allah is Ghaniyyun Halim. But His being Ghani, independent, would be directed towards the topic at hand. And His being Halim would be directed towards the topic at hand. And same thing, it would be mentioned that Allah is Sami', hearer, and He's Basir, seer, or that He's Alim, knower. And this recurs in the Quran in different spots. So someone might think it's just repetition only, but really those names, those adjectives, those descriptions of Allah, they are relevant to the tafsir, and the interpreter will bring it out. Like Imam An-Nasafi, in the interpretation of An-Nasafi, you know that this tafsir here that I'm reading to you was translated in big part from An-Nasafi, also Jalalain. Those are the two main sources for this tafsir, and there are others. And Nasafi would direct those attributes of Allah, the explanation of them, in the ayat, towards the context, whatever the topic at hand is. Jalalain less so. Jalalain more has just generic explanation. Jalalain, for example, would just say Allah is independent and not punishing swiftly, and then keeps moving. Nasafi, he would say Allah is independent of their charities because of the topic, not swiftly punishing those who spitefully remind about their gifts. So what I'm saying is, in another ayah that has another topic, Allah would tell us that He's Ghaniyun Halim, and the interpretation that goes with those same two adjectives would be different because of observing the topic at hand. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. All those who have believed, do not nullify the reward of your charities by reminders of your generosity and by harm. It is said the most generous people are those who give and forget. You wouldn't even remember you gave someone something. That's a good thing. كالذي ينفق ماله رئاء الناس ولا يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر. Like the hypocrite who spends his money to be seen by the people and does not believe in Allah and the last day. The hypocrite who spends his money to be seen by the people. Hypocrite here means he's kafir, he's pretending to be a Muslim. Spending his money not sincerely for the sake of Allah, but to be seen by the people, to be recognized. And he does not believe in Allah and the last day. Don't be like that one. فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ صَفْوَانٍ عَلَيْهِ تُرَابٍ. So his allegory, his example, and that of his spending is the example of a smooth rock upon which is soil. Smooth rock with soil on top of it. فَأَصَابَهُ وَابِلٌ. Then there falls upon it heavy rain. فَتَرَكَهُ صَلْدًا. Thus leaving it bare, washed the soil away. لَا يَقْدِرُونَ عَلَى شَيْءٍ مِّمَّا كَسَبُوا. They are not able to get reward for any deed they have acquired, like the smooth rock would not retain soil after a heavy rain. It's all washed away. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And Allah does not guide the unbelieving folk. As long as they choose blasphemy. He does not guide them as long as they choose blasphemy. وَمَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ وتثبيتا من أنفسهم كمثل جنة بربوة أصابها وابل. And the allegory, meaning the example of those who spend a lot or a little of their monies. A little bit of charity is still charity. Out of seeking the acceptance of Allah. That's why they did it. And out of sincere faithfulness from within themselves. كمثل حبة بربوة أصابها وابل. It is as the example of a garden on a highland upon which fell heavy rain, a plateau upon which fell heavy rain. فآتت أكلها ضعفين. Thus it brings forth its fruit twofold. That means double. Like the one who spends a lot. فَإِن لَّمْ يُصِبْهَا وَابِلٌ فَطَلٌّ. And if heavy rain does not fall upon it, then light rain is sufficient. So that's the example of who gives a lot and who gives a little. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. And Allah is of what little or lot you do, seer, and He knows your sincerity or insincerity, and He shall recompense you accordingly. أَيَوَدُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن تَكُونَ لَهُ جَنَّةٌ مِّن نَخِيلٍ وَأَعْنَابٍ. Would one of you love to have a garden that is his livelihood, containing palms and grapes? تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. With streams flowing on the ground beneath them. لَهُ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ. Having in it all kinds of fruits. وَأَصَابَهُ الْكِبَرُ وَلَهُ ذُرِّيَّةٌ ضُعَفَاءُ. While old age afflicted him, and thus he cannot work, and while having young, weak offspring who cannot work. So this is a scenario. Would one of you love to have a garden with palms and grapes and streams and all kinds of fruits, but you're old? Yani, this garden is your livelihood, but you're old. But you're old and you can't work, and you have young, weak offspring who cannot work. فَأَصَابَهَا إِعْصَارٌ فِيهِ نَارٌ فَاحْتَرَقَتْ. Then there befalls it a whirlwind within which there is fire, and thus it is scorched, that garden, leaving him without resources when he needs them the most. Would one of you like that? كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Like Allah clarifies the similitude of who spends insincerely and shall have nothing in the afterlife when he needs it most. Thus does Allah clarify for you the signs of the monotheism and the signs of the religion, so that you may reflect. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا من طيبات ما كسبتم. O those who have believed, spend from the lawful goods of what you have acquired by paying zakah for your trade. Yani, pay the zakah for your trade. So we've studied that together before. What's the trade? The trade is for you to buy something with an intent of selling it for a profit. And then with that profit, you buy more product to sell it for a profit, with which you buy more product to sell for a profit, and so on. If you do that for an entire year, for example, from Ramadan 1st to Ramadan 1st, then you price your inventory, yani your merchandise, wholesale, and whatever cash you've generated from your trade, and if the value of that, what's the value of that in gold or silver? I'm summarizing here. What's the value of that in gold or silver? If that were an amount of gold or silver by which you'd have to pay zakah, then you're going to pay the zakah of gold or silver according to more details than what I've just mentioned to you. Now I really blended some things and condensed some things. What I said for you is not enough for you to know how to pay the zakah of trade. It's just to give you an idea. وَمِمَّا أَخْرَجْنَا لَكُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ, and from what we have brought forth from you from the earth, and from what we have brought forth for you from the earth of grains, fruits, and minerals. Spend and pay the zakah on your crops, and pay the zakah on your gold and silver, if the rules of zakah apply to you. What did I say? I said wholesale. So wholesale. Market price. Wholesale market price. وَلَا تَيَمَّمُوا الْخَبِيثَ مِنْهُ تُنْفِقُونَ, and do not target what is of wretched quality to spend from it. وَلَسْتُمْ بِآخِذِيهِ, while you would not take it yourselves. إِلَّا أَن تُغْمِضُوا فِيهِ, you would not take it for yourselves unless you cheapen its price. Don't target what is of wretched quality to spend for the sake of Allah. And this thing, you wouldn't even take it for yourself without cheapening the price. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ, and know that Allah is ghani, not in need of your charity, praised in all situations. الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرَ, the devil frightens you with poverty, so to discourage you from charity and to discourage you from paying zakat. What did the Prophet say, alayhi salatu wassalam? The one who spends, the one who relies on Allah as he deserves to be relied upon, Allah will provide for him like he provides for the bird. The bird goes in the morning with his stomach caved in. He doesn't know where he's going to get his sustenance from. And he comes back with his stomach bulging. That's how Allah will provide for you if you rely on Him. Excuse me. How do you do that? What's going to happen is you're going to need something. And you're going to look at your money. And you're going to say, my money's tight. So you're going to have second thoughts about spending your money on your obligation or giving this charity. So how do you rely on Allah? That fear that you have that comes, that reluctance that comes, you have to fight that. You push it to the side. You say, Allah suffices me. And I'm not talking about here destroying yourself. I'm not talking about doing something that apparently will harm you. I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying, for example, you have your money that you need to support your family and then you spend it on nonsense. Now you can't support your family and that was obvious for you. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, like, your money is tight. You don't want to spend too much. You want to be, I think the word is frugal. So picky. Tight-fisted you want to be because your money's tight. But now, if you're too tight-fisted, you're not going to give a charity. Or you might not even pay your zakah. So you have to loosen that grip there, loosen that fist, and say, Allah suffices me. Then you need to do that again and again and again, so you get used to it. You might reach a point where you're so accustomed to relying on Allah, you're so accustomed to relying on Allah that you will find your sustenance easily. These things work. When the Prophet says that, he's not lying. He's always telling you the truth. But these are matters that depend on faith. When a person is so sure that he's going to find what he needs, like all the time, like the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. The devil frightens you with poverty. Here, very literally, the devil promises you poverty. That is, he frightens you with the poverty so to discourage you. وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. And he commands you with miserliness and not paying zakah. وَاللَّهُ يَعِدُكُمْ مَغْفِرَةً مِّنْهُ وَفَضْلًا. While Allah promises you for your charity, forgiveness from himself, and generosity of getting something better. وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah is wasi', vastly generous, giving abundantly to whomever he wills, knower of your doings and intentions. And what did the Prophet say, alayhi salatu wassalam? Whoever leaves out something for the sake of Allah, Allah will give him something better. يُؤْتِي الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He grants the wisdom from the Quran, the Sunnah, and the beneficial knowledge, that leads to practice to whom he wills. He grants the wisdom to whom he wills. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And whoever is granted the wisdom, he indeed is given abundant good because of being on the path to everlasting bliss. What did the Prophet say, alayhi salatu wasalam? Didn't the Prophet say that there's good envy for two types of people? And subhanAllah, this hadith now is relevant to all of what we're saying. I didn't realize it now until I'm saying it to you. There's good envy for two types of people. A person that Allah gave him money and then he spent all of his money on the truth for the sake of Allah. And a person to whom Allah granted wisdom, and so he teaches it to the people and he judges by it. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And none take heed of God's encouragement to spend, but those of sound intellect. وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفَقَةٍ, and whatever expenditure you may have spent, whether obligatory zakah or charity that's not obligatory, or even if you spent it in sin. أَوْ نَذَرْتُم مِّن نَذْرٍ, and whatever vow you may have vowed, good or bad, yani whatever pledge you may have pledged, good or bad, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُهُ, surely Allah knows it and shall recompense you. Yani, He'll pay you for it, good or bad. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ, and there is not for the unjust who do not pay the zakah or who do not fulfill the vows, the pledges, any supporters, yani any protectors, any defenders to protect them from God's punishment. إِن تُبْدُوا الصَّدَقَاتِ فَنِعِمَّا هِيَ, if you display your acts of charity, then how good is that display when it is obligatory, or when it's optional but done to encourage others. Yani, you have two cases of displaying the good deeds. Here is mentioned charities, but this is broad though. It's not only for the charities, what I'm about to say to you and what this tafsir alludes to. You have two cases. The deed is either obligatory or it's voluntary. So when it's obligatory, then it's recommended to display it. It's recommended to display the obligatory worship. And it's not recommended to display the optional worship unless you are encouraging others. If you display the optional worship to encourage others, then that's good. That's not insincerity. Thank you. J is Jalalain, N is Nasafi. وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا وَتُؤْتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءَ وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا وَتُؤْتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءَ وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا وَتُؤْتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, and if you hide it when it is voluntary and give it to the poor instead of the rich, then that is better for you. You're welcome. Ameen wa fikum. وَيُكَفِّرُ عَنْكُمْ مِنْ سَيِّئَاتِكُمْ, and He will cover for you some of your bad deeds. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ, and Allah is of what you do, whether concealed or displayed, all-knowing. ليس عليك هداهم ليس عليك هداهم, not incumbent on you, Muhammad, is creating their guidance to Islam. It's not obligatory on you, Muhammad, to create their guidance to Islam, because creating is not an obligation on the slaves because they are unable to do it. Allah didn't obligate us to do what we're unable to do, like creating something. Your obligation, O Muhammad, is mere conveyance. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. Rather, Allah guides to Islam whom He wills. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَلِأَنفُسِكُمْ. And whatever you believers spend of good money, lawful money, it is for your own good. So do not give reminders of your charities, and do not harm, and do not use as charity property of poor quality. But it is still a charity nonetheless. If you give as charity something you don't prefer, it's still a charity and it still has its reward. The best charity is that which you're most attached to. And also, charity gets the sins forgiven, and charity relieves calamities. If you have a calamity, give charity. If you have sick relative, give charity. وَمَا تُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ. And you shall not spend but out of seeking Allah's acceptance. Yani, do not spend but out of seeking Allah's acceptance. Don't spend insincerely, nor spend from what is wretched. Like, who did that? Qabil, Cain, the son of Adam. Cain and Abel. Both of them gave an offering. Cain, he's the killer of Abel. He put up as an offering the worst of his wealth, some bad crops. Abel put up as an offering the best of his wealth, a fat ram. Abel's charity was accepted and Cain's was not. They knew the acceptance by a fire coming down from the sky, devouring the charity or the offering. So when that happened, then Cain envied his brother. He already envied him. And he said, I swear to God, I'll kill you, etc. Till the end of that story. We'll come to it when we get to it, if Allah enables us. In Surat Al-Ma'idah. So we're still few surahs away. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يُوَفَّ إِلَيْكُمْ. And whatever you spend of good money shall be paid back to you in full. وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تُظْلَمُونَ. And you shall not be deprived of any earned reward. لِلْفُقَرَاءِ الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا. لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. Hold on one second here. I just want to see something. The harakat to cut off a little bit here, if you can see my screen. There's a dhamma on here, but the hoop on the dhamma is cut off at the line. للفقراء الذين أحصروا في سبيل الله لا يستطيعون ضربا في الأرض. These charities are for the poor who are busy by being committed to performing jihad in the way of Allah. Unable, due to being occupied with jihad, to go about in the land to earn. And this is talking about the jihad of the sword. But I'll remind you, there's another jihad. I don't mean jihad of the self also. I'm not talking about that one. When you fight yourself to be a better Muslim. There's another jihad, which is jihadul lisan, the jihad of the tongue. That's for the learned Muslims to go out into the world defending Islam and spreading da'wah and refuting the people of deviance. No, this one we learned is called jihadul lisan, because you're using your tongue. Here, in this case, your tongue is the weapon. That's what we're doing here. We're holding down the fort and waging war by our tongues and fighting off the enemies. Holding down the fort until when the time comes. When the time comes, we're going to know it, insha'Allah ta'ala. يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء من التعفف. Anyone ignorant about their reality reckons them to be rich on account of their self-restraint. They don't ask people. You can't see that they are poor. You'd think that they were rich. Okay. Al-lisan, jihadul lisan. That's what I learned. That's what we learned. If it has another name according to some other people, then maybe. Yeah. So, للفقراء الذين أحصروا في سبيل الله لا يستطيعون ضربا في الأرض. These charities are for the poor who are busy fighting, waging jihad for the sake of Allah. Because they are busy doing this, they are unable to go about in the land to earn. So they're poor. يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء من التعفف. Anyone ignorant about their reality reckons them to be rich on account of their self-restraint. They don't ask. Even though they need it, if they were to ask, they'd have an excuse. It would be permissible for them to beg because of their poverty, but they don't. تعرفهم بسيماهم. You, O listener, can recognize them by their sign. Their sign is their humbleness, or their sign is their scruffiness, or maybe they have another sign. لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. They do not ask the people fundamentally, let alone insistently. So if you just translate the words of the ayah alone, they do not ask the people insistently. But there's something implied here from what we already read, which is that they don't even ask the people in the first place. That's the meaning of يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاءَ مِنَ التَّعَفُّفِ. Anyone ignorant about them would reckon that they are rich because of their self-restraint. They don't ask. But then Allah says, لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. They don't ask the people insistently. This means they don't even ask the people, not to mention, let alone that they don't do it insistently. Or, let alone that they would do it insistently. They don't even ask in the first place. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. And whatever you spend of good money, then surely Allah is about it knowledgeable. الذين ينفقون أموالهم بالليل والنهار سرا وعلانية. Those who spend their monies by night and day, secretly and openly. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. They shall have their reward from their Lord. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And no fear shall be upon them, nor shall they grieve. Wallahu a'lam. We're going to stop here.
In regard the wholesale price and the market price.
Yes.
The wholesale price is those who are selling in jumla, in bulk.
Yes.
So what it is, whether he's selling in bulk or if he's a retailer, when they do the zakat, at that moment when they are ready, when the lunar year lapses, they look the inventory based on the market price. At this time the price is going up and up every time. Maybe you bought it last time for a cheap price, but when it comes to the zakat time, you use the market value. That is the price at that moment.
Yes, that's true. The market price, wholesale market price.
Whether it is wholesale, is the market price. Whether retailer, the market price. That's the difference. Otherwise, simply we can't say the wholesale price.
Yes, not only wholesale price. You're right.
Yeah, market price is just whether for wholesale, it's market price. Like gold was the one who's selling gold. A year ago that he bought, this time it's skyrocketing. It has to be based on what it is. Okay, barakallahu fikum. That's the one.
Yes, but just for clarity, it's both of them, wholesale market price.
Not wholesale market price. Both of them, they use market price. Whether you buy a bulk, they have a market price. Whether you buy, for example, when you go to the store that we are going every day, when we buy water, a bottle of water, today it could be $1.
Yes.
But when the guy, the store owner bought it, it used to be 50 cents. But whatever that inventory, when he does, he rated as a $1. The wholesaler, also the bulk, he bought 20 bottle. That 20 bottle, what is today the market price, not the way how the last time what he bought.
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is, when his lunar year is over, he looks at all of what he has.
Yeah, and then he rated by the market price.
Wholesale market price. Wholesale market price.
Not necessarily. Wholesale is the one selling bulk.
Yeah, that's what he has to do, because he's looking at all of his stuff. If he wants to sell all of it now.
Okay, you mean wholesale, by that means okay.
Yes.
Whatever, he has everything in his store.
Yes, all of it.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, wholesale price, when you do it, when you say it, it is those who are saying for bulk. We do not have access to go to there.
Yes.
Unless you are a merchant. Okay. Barakallah. This is just what I wanted to clarify.
Okay. Barakallahu feekum.
Amin wa bikum.